Let's jump right to the Texans. It's a great subject. They won a 17-10, old-fashioned, snot bubbles, knock-in kind of football, which was throwback. Did you like it? What'd you think? What'd you think about the defense and the offense?
Oh, I liked what I saw of the Houston Texans. Just like you said, 17-10 win over the Pittsburgh Steelers. It reminded me of the games from back in the day when it was just a bunch of guys punching each other, fighting. You saw some shoving. And I think they answered a lot of questions. I never like calling any team, any player mentally weak. And before the season started, a lot of so-called experts were calling your Houston Texans mentally weak.
Soft.
Soft. They were calling them soft and weak, and they just said they didn't have the strength. But I really think they showed something. When their best player went down against that Pittsburgh Steelers defense, Andre Johnson went down grabbing the back of his leg. He went down in dramatic fashion. All the Texans did, everybody stepped up, and they continued to believe that they were going to win, and they made the plays they needed to make to beat the Pittsburgh Steelers. And what I really liked is right after the injury, they threw a pass to James Casey, and he made some inspiring catch, tried to leap over everybody to get the first down, and he sent a message not only to his teammates but to the Pittsburgh Steelers that no matter who's off this team, the guys that are on the field are going to do what we have to do to win the game.
Now, you may need to remind him that he's not Superman, he's Thor, and Thor comes from throwing, not from diving.
Yeah, but before he was Thor, he was an owl, and owls fly, so he took off at flight.
You know, his wings need to be clipped. I'll tell you about a guy who defense would like to clip his wings. That's Antonio Smith. He's had a sack in each of the first 4 games. His career high is 5.5 when he was in Arizona last year before he came here. He hadn't had more than 4 here. What's up with Antonio Smith?
You know, he's playing the way the guys who actually watch the game watch him. This is what he does. He disrupts the passer. And I remember last year talking to Antonio Smith, I said, you must be agitated because I've seen about 6 sacks that you could have or should have had, and the quarterback either just got rid of the ball while he was hitting him or he just flat out missed the quarterback. So I'm not surprised that he has 4 sacks after 4 games. I'm surprised that he's not getting the attention that he deserves because right now it's only the first quarter of the season. After 4 games, I think he's the best defensive end in the AFC. He's leading all AFC defensive ends in sacks, but it's not just about sacks. What he's doing against the run, what he's doing with the pressures, what he does with his overall team, the way he gets them hyped, the way he gets them energetic. This guy is playing ball the same way, the same intensity he was playing last year, but now he has the stats to back it up. And if he continues this up, I expect to see him in Hawaii at the end of the season.
And I bet I know who your favorite outside linebacker is in the AFC, considering he also has 4 sacks. Can Mario Williams, Antonio Smith, Brian Cushing, D'Amico, all those guys continue against the Raiders with their number 1 running game, play them the way they played the Steelers?
Well, they're going to have to because not only do they have the number 1 running game, they have the number 1 running back. You know, Darren McFadden's leading the NFL in rushing. He's playing the way they expected him to play when they drafted him out of Arkansas, and he just looks good. And he doesn't get enough credit for his size. I was at an event with him in Dallas for Andre Garrard's deal, and just seeing him without his pads on, I was like, who's that linebacker? And they're like, that's Darren McFadden. So he's a big guy. He's a fast guy, just like Arian Foster. So it's going to be exciting to see what arguably could be the 2 best running backs in the NFL today going head-to-head against each other. And the Houston Texans defense, they're really going to have to go back to their fundamentals, their techniques. They're going to have gap control. They're going to have to wrap up. They're going to have to gang tackle because you're not going to see too many one-on-one tackles against Darren McFadden.
Remember last year they went to Oakland. Arian Foster didn't start because of disciplinary reasons. Andre Johnson was out, and they still ran the ball on him like crazy. They'll have to do it again. Now, Matt Schaub's coming off a game, only 138 yards. What did you think about Matt's performance?
And you say only, and a lot of people say only 14 for 21 for 138. To me, without the interceptions and a victory and a running back who's running for 155 yards in that game, that's a good day. Sometimes those prolific passers like a Matt Schaub, like a Tom Brady, like a Peyton Manning, they have to know when they need to become the managers of the game. They have to know when they need to put their Trent Dilfer hat on. And the game against Pittsburgh, that's when you didn't want to take too many risks by throwing it downfield, especially after Andre Johnson went down. And an interesting fact is after Andre Johnson went down, they did not complete another pass to a wide receiver. Everything went to running backs and tight ends. And that's just managing the game, making smart plays, not putting it in the hands of the Pittsburgh defense. I like what Matt Schaub did. And Matt Schaub being the teammate that he is, the leader that he is, he'll take 138 yards if he's going to get that victory every time.
Their offensive line is kicking some serious butt.
Yeah.
If they can do it against the Steelers, they should be able to do it against the Raiders, shouldn't they?
You would think. You know, everyone's talking about the Steelers. They're not the same old Steelers. But I will tell you what, up front, when you see Casey Hampton up there and you see some of those guys, James Ferrier, James Harrison, Wood fluidly. They're still playing, and they're still playing at a high level. So for the Texans' offensive line to be able to create the gaps that they created against Pittsburgh, I expect to see the same thing against Oakland. They have Richard Seymour playing for Oakland, who's a very, very good defensive end. But the way the Houston Texans offensive line handled Pittsburgh, you have to expect and want to see them do the same thing against the Oakland Raiders.
You mentioned Andre Johnson earlier and his injury, the hamstring injury. When he looked like a sniper had picked him off and he went down, did you think knee, Achilles? What was your immediate reaction?
My immediate reaction was Achilles, because I've seen it time and time again from Larry Izzo to Derek Burgess, where they were running and there wasn't anybody around them and they just dropped in pain. And I remember talking to those guys and saying, what did it feel like? And they said it felt like somebody just kicked him out of the blue, like a ghost kicked him. And when you saw Andre Johnson go down the way he went down, knowing how tough he is, it still concerns me. We don't know what the official report is. He's seeing multiple people. You just don't know what's going to be the final outcome of that injury. But anytime any player goes down without anybody touching him, it seems serious. And that might seem ironic when you say, well, no one touched you, but that's when you know it's something internal and you get the sense that something either tore or ripped away from the bone. So that was very concerning.
My column in the Chronicle on Wednesday is about if they can afford to lose him against any team, it's the Raiders. He missed last year's game, they beat him. He missed another game, they beat him. And even when Andre played, because of Nnamdi Asomugha, they never threw him the ball as much against the Raiders as they did other teams. The only thing is, the Raiders now can commit that safety to the run and not have to double team Kevin Walter or Jacoby Jones or any of the tight ends. So those guys are going to be playing against man coverage. Of those guys, who's the most likely to beat man coverage?
All of them, because when you think, and it's not that I'm saying they're all that great of receivers and I'm being a homer, but when you think of who's going to be manning them, you know, when you talk about a James Casey, it's going to be a middle linebacker most of the time manning him. He's going to beat that middle linebacker. Owen Daniels is going to be a linebacker at safety. I expect Owen Daniels to win those battles. Jacoby Jones, now he might get double teamed because of his speed, and I think teams are afraid of his downfield ability, but he's going to have to prove it to them by catching the ball. It's one thing to beat somebody on your route, but you have to finish the play by catching the ball consistently. And if he can do that, I think they might make adjustments and double team Jacoby. Then Kevin Walter will be freed up.
Arian Foster back with a vengeance, 33 touches. They're hoping that Ben Tate will be able to be back to be the backup and maybe touch it 5 to 10 times. Derek Ward's having problems recovering from his sprained ankle. They've tried different things, shooting him up, different regime. It hadn't worked so far. They don't want Chris Ogbonnaya to be the only healthy back. Foster's back. Can he do against the Raiders what he did against them last year and what he just did against the Steelers?
Definitely. I mean, Foster's your workhorse. He's becoming a great running back. After last year, after the year before, everybody said, hold up, don't call him great just yet. He has to prove it, and he's been proving it time and time again. If he's healthy and he stays in the game and gets the ball 20, 30 times, he's almost guaranteed to get 100 yards. And it's not what he does right when he gets the ball that's impressive. It's what he does when he gets to that second level, the way he jukes people, the way he breaks the tackles, and his speed. For somebody that big, he has a lot of speed. So I definitely believe that he'll be productive. I don't care who he's playing. You know, he's to the point now, he's shown me, it doesn't matter what defense you put out there, Arian Foster's going to succeed if you feed him the ball and in front of that offensive line.
Eric Winston talked to him early last season about if a back dove for an extra yard at the end of every carry and carried 200 times, that's another 400 yards.
Yeah.
And another 200 yards. And I watched him the other day do that, and picking up 2 yards diving like that. Have you ever seen a back do that at the end of carries, like he's consciously trying for 1 or 2 more yards?
Not as consistently in Arian, and I think you were right when you said extra 400 yards, because when you're 6'2" like Arian Foster is, and you dive, you're going to pick up another 2 yards, not just another yard, and that's what makes him great. That's what makes his stats overwhelming every time you open up and you see he has over 100 yards. It's those plays where it looks like he's about to be tackled for a 2-3 yard gain, and then he dives and he stretches out and uses that 6 foot, that big body to pick up an extra 2 yards. So that's something that's impressive. He's always thinking about picking up the extra yards, and I think that's ultimately what makes him great.
When Dante Robinson was known as their best corner, their big play corner, he didn't get many interceptions. Jonathan Joseph gets his hands on the ball, 2 touchdowns called back in 1 game. He would have had 3 games in a row with an interception. Has he met your expectations for a guy getting $23 million guaranteed.
Over and beyond. Daniel Manning, the signings have been so far home runs when you look at those two guys in the first 4 games. And you compare him to Dante Robinson. Jonathan Joseph is a different kind of cornerback. He's more athletic. He's more of a playmaker. He's more of a guy that's a ball hawk. And Dante Robinson was just a stone-cold hitter. He was a Ronnie Lott type to ignite his teammates with his big hits. So they're different kind of cornerbacks, and you have to like what you're seeing out of Jonathan Joseph, because as nice as it is to have a cornerback that hits you and knocks your helmet off like Dante Robinson, you really want that guy who's going to give you blanket coverage, interceptions, and take those to the house.
You mentioned Daniel Manning, one of the dumbest penalties ever. You see Jonathan Joseph with the ball, said he didn't see him with the ball, but you don't need to push a kicker down from behind. That should have been 17-0.
Oh, it should have been, and the score shouldn't have been 17-10. I think both touchdowns should have counted because they could have been a way for them not to get the penalties and still score. And you're absolutely right. When it's a kicker and your cornerback, your number one cornerback has the ball, you expect your cornerback to defeat the kicker. And Daniel Manning should have just shielded the kicker, not kick him. But you know what? In defense of Daniel Manning, when bullets are flying, so to speak, and the adrenaline's pumping and you see a different colored jersey, you're just thinking knock him down.